Welcome to this week's episode of The Dental Guys. I'm John, the Dental Guy.
And I'm Wes, the Dental Guy.
And we are really excited about today. I think that, a lot of times, as you guys know, if you listen to the show for a long time, we tend to do maybe some kind of recap of our lives and everything, but we've really got a lot to bring you today because we've just gotten back from what we've always said to our listeners is the best implant meeting that we've been to consistently good every year, and that's the Academy of Osseointegration annual meeting, which was in Charlotte, our kind of backyard. It was weird to get to drive there, Wes. It was really nice, but what a cool place.
It's always nice to not fly and drive. And yeah. I enjoyed the meeting thoroughly. Actually, kind of thought Charlotte wasn't a bad place. It was a good place to meet.
Charlotte's come a long way, I think. There's a lot. Obviously, it's been financial for a long time, so there's every bank you can imagine. But now I think we're seeing more people realizing that it's a good place to do meetings because the weather's usually pretty predictable. It's pretty nice, easy to get to. The downtown is taking on a lot more now of an eclectic feel. Food, of course, we had some coffee. Shout out to Night Swim Coffee, which was consistently excellent
Swim.
coffee.
Let's go.
I mean, that place was amazing. So I think, but I think that it was a great place to have a meeting. And I think going into this meeting, as you know, if you've been listening to the show the last couple of months, even you've obviously not only heard the hype train from us, and we don't get paid to say this by AO. It's just a meeting we've always gone to. But you've also seen some episodes of past AO meetings where we got the opportunity to interview some amazing people. So this meeting, Wes, I think we're always sort of looking to meetings like the AO, say, what's really going on? Is there something changing, or is it confirming things we're already doing, or is it just kind of stagnant? And that's an interesting place to spend a little bit of time, Wes. Tell us your perspective, the last few years in implant dentistry. Obviously, there's always new things going on. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, nothing new, because there's a lot of new. But in the end, have we seen monumental changes that would change everything about the way you do things?
Well, before that, this episode is brought to you by the Dental Crafters Network. What's changing is laboratories are changing, and in some ways for the good, in some ways for the bad. But I'll tell you this about the Dental Crafters Network, John, is we are so glad that they have partnered with us this year in collaborating to help you guys take it to the next level. You've heard us talk about the Dental Crafters Network for years. Before you guys even knew it, Brad, the dental lab guy, has been an integral part of the Dental Guys. And we've had Brad on the show this year. He's got an episode coming up. I'm super excited about that for you, where we talk about some special things. But, John, if you're interested in knowing more about the Dental Crafters Network, tell us a little bit about how we can, get hooked up. And really in a lab that has changed with the times and isn't stagnant and is moving forward. John?
Yeah, it's important that you have laboratory partners that I think have the right amount of size that they can be investing in equipment, in technology, and training, but not so big that you lose the personal touch. And that's what Dental Crafters does well. If you want to check out what they're doing, probably the easiest way is just give them a call, 1-800-472-8302. You might even hear Brad's voice as you call, welcoming you each call. Or you can just go to dentalcrafters.net. That's dentalcrafters.net. And remember to tell them the Dental Guys sent you, because they're going to give you a percentage off your first case just for being a Dental Guys listener. So once again, thanks to the Dental Crafters Network. So Wes, back to the question, what has changed?
Yeah, guys, I don't know that. Are we just really just trying to figure out stuff to talk about? at the Academy of Osseointegration meeting? I mean, are we just trying to like dig into the nitty gritty, the things that really don't matter? Are implant designs changing? Is is the market really? I mean, we in some ways have questions like,
Mm.
and I think some questions were answered, and we're going to get to that because there is something coming we are so excited about. It is possibly the biggest thing in dental implant,
Hmm.
um, maybe the biggest thing to come to dentistry in a long time. And
Yep.
we're going to talk about that later on the show. Um, but
But I
I
think
think,
the thing though is we look at, we've talked about, and again, for those of you who know, been around the show a long time, you know a little bit about some of the discussions we've had in implant design.
mm,
And just as an example, okay, so there were certain implant designs that came around. I'll just use the Astrotech implant
yeah,
because
go
Wes and I
for it.
both know the implant. We were both, you know, it was an implant we've used or been familiar with for many years. There's lots of great implants. That just happens to be one that we have talked about a lot. Why have we talked about it a lot? Because the design that that company happened to come up with over the years, we have seen many companies gravitating toward an implant similar to it. And there's several other designs that are excellent. But the idea of, as we have seen over the last few years, rather than innovating with brand new implant designs, I'm not
Mm.
saying there's none of that. We're simplifying. I mean, we obviously there have been new implant designs, but the main things that we're seeing are things like aggressive thread patterns, right? It seems like that's been a big change. But in the end, a lot of implants have kind of started looking similar, more conical connections versus hex connections.
I mean, designed to
More
be placed crestal or subcrestal.
right,
You
subcrestal
know, it's
implants, right?
take the pressure off the cortex.
Right. And the
Root
idea
form
of
implants,
having
John. Root form
right,
implants. I'm sick and tired of
exactly.
talking about this because if you
I
haven't,
know.
if you aren't placing a root form implant, what is wrong with you? And that's the kind of like discussion that has already been fleshed out. We know polished collars aren't meant to be placed below bone. Sure, we can use them in the posterior, but let's not talk about putting polished collars in the anterior anymore. Let's
Well, we
not
had some
talk about, like,
interesting
John, come on, let's not talk about
I
X
know.
hex using it for a single unit restoration. Let's move beyond some of this stuff
Yeah.
and
And I
like
think
welcome to the
as
Bahamas.
we exactly. And as we were trying to kind of get I think that both Wes and I have become jaded about one thing, especially in dental implant research, and that is this whole idea of people reporting their marginal bone loss.
Yeah.
And of course, you talk to companies across the board. Many companies will sort of essentially say, "Hey, our marginal bone loss is this after 1 year, after 3 years, after 5 years." Right? And Wes is holding up the book Zero Bone Loss Concept. So if you've been with us a long time, you know that the truth is that it there's so many factors that go into that, right? So just because we were trying to get this out of some of our interviewees at the meeting, and we kind of got some of it eventually, that you can't just tell me marginal bone loss. You have to tell me, what was the soft tissue thickness? Was this implant an implant that you placed more deeply because that's the surgical protocol? Or were you putting all the implants supracrestal, whatever, whatever? We know enough now to know that you can't fool us anymore by saying, oh, our implant is special sauce, as much as I think what we used to. Now, that doesn't mean there's not innovation going on and there's some unique things. And I'm liking the fact I'm seeing one of the things I was excited about at the meeting was seeing some implant systems that have been kind of old school. They're when you have an implant system that has like an internal hex deciding they're going to go, like this is BioHorizons debuting. They're going from the classic, basically internal hex connection to a camlog style connection
When you
on their
told me
tapered.
this, I just was like, come on, man.
I know.
I
I mean,
mean,
between them and Zimvi, there's some of the few implants that have really stuck with the internal connection, really almost dying on that hill of like internal hex. And I look at them and they're seeing that, again, a lot of these same commonalities with great implant systems. The further we're putting them deep below the bone, the more we need a better connection, and so on and so forth. I think, though, Wes, that's us being a little jaded, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just that I
Mm,
think we have to look at what are the differences and what's really going on. What are we learning? And this meeting, one of the things they focused a lot on was periimplantitis and what's really going on around implants that have disease. So, Wes, talk a little bit about kind of what are some of the things we learned, some of the speakers we heard, especially in the
mm.
opening symposium, talking about some of the theories, even some other fields sort of getting involved in the discussion.
Yeah, we had the opportunity to just a little update on the content. You guys are probably wondering, when is the content coming? It's coming. We had an opportunity to interview um, Craig Mish. We had an opportunity to interview Joe Kahn, Dr. Norton, one of our favorites. Um, Not just to mention a few. I mean, there's probably 11 different interviews that we're going to unpack for you guys. Not
Mhm.
tonight, but over this year, we'll be peppering these episodes in. And what an amazing time, because we discovered some stuff, and we're going to talk
Mhm.
about some special stuff. That airbag moment that we really are super excited about. It's a game changer. But some of the things in the opening symposium that really kind of got me excited, John, the first guy was we interviewed him, Edward. What's his last name? John, help me.
Schwartz.
Yeah, Schwartz.
Yeah, Edward Schwartz.
Edward Schwartz, Dr. Edward Schwartz is a biologist, a biochemist. I'm probably messing that up, but let's just say that he is a true scientist. He
Yeah,
got
bone
him,
biologist.
bone
Bone
biologist.
biologist.
Now,
Yeah.
here's some things. They brought him in to talk about his particular tech that they have designed a bisphosphonate, a non-nitrogen containing bisphosphonate, to piggyback carry an antibiotic down to the micro cellular level inside of lacunae, right? These little channels inside of bone that antibiotics can't get to in a high enough concentration, where bacteria lay latent for years
Yeah.
and get
We were
ready to
talking
pop
about
off.
how in these he was talking about how in these failed hip
Yeah,
replacements when there's
infected
infection.
hips.
They're like, well, where is where is the infection? And sometimes it was, like Wes said, it was way down in these little tubules, these little canal systems that no antibiotic can get to. So yeah, designed a drug that uses the bisphosphonate idea without being the
Mm.
same destructiveness to try to remove. And so it led to this great discussion of, okay, wait a second. So you're saying that infection bacteria could be latent in bone without us knowing about it, even if radiographically everything looks great. Well, what does that start to make you think about?
Yeah, it's a
Failed
connection here.
implant sites, failed
Well,
root canal sites, all
we had a
those things. We'll be talking
periodontist
more about that.
on, and she discussed the contamination of the surgical site at the time of surgery. That if there is gingivitis in the area, an uptick in bacteria next to your surgical site, how it's contaminating the cover screw permanently,
Mm,
contaminating the surgical site. You may not see the problem now. You may not
mhm.
see it at a year, 3, 5, 10 years, but there is the potential for this bacteria to lay latent that long, regardless of you using antibiotics to treat it. On top of that, we also saw this idea of, we've heard of this before, of titanium particles
Mhm.
and leaking out from our implants as the implants start to um, basically rust. And
Yeah, to
how
corrode.
they're
Yeah.
corroding, and we're putting them into an environment where corrosion happens. And what's happening to that corrosion, and how is it impacting the tissues around the implant? Is it causing
Mhm.
inflammation? They talked about that. They definitively, and I really believe, I don't know that I know that it's ever been on the main podium, John. I mentioned this to you. They
Mm.
talked about the thickness of soft tissue and abutment design and all the things that go into preventing problems with prosthetics and the thickness of tissue around dental implants. They definitively said from the podium, Dr. Galici said that we need more than 2 millimeters of thickness of, um, uh, of soft tissue. And we also need to pay attention to the type of an emergence profile that our implant abutments have and where the transition from the subcritical to the critical points in the abutment design are, and how
Hmm.
that impacts the health of the tissue. So, all of these things, just like Tomas talked about in Zero Bone Loss Concepts, the same thing was kind of coming out about peri-implantitis, is that this is a multifactorial issue.
Hmm.
The problem is probably not just bacteria, it has something to do with it. It may be compounding over the years of factors that lead to ailing implants, I should say. And also, um, one of the fathers of implant dentistry got up there and really he kind of disagreed with some of the things they were saying. He was
Yeah.
still kind of hung up on the idea that there's a rejection idea, a foreign body equilibrium, and at some points in the biology of the acceptance and rejection, we will get bone remodeling, and all of a sudden it can turn off. And what I thought about him was, you know, Al Burkinson was great in his presentation, but yet I think a little bit dated. I think it's and I and I'm respectful of him because of what he's done for implant industry and innovation, but I feel like that some of the things that he was saying was a little bit behind the times and didn't
Yep.
really line up with some of the other things
Yep.
that the people on the podium were saying.
Well, when you had people talking about too, and we've been looking for this idea, so many people, Wes, during that conversation after when we were interviewing them, the words
Mm,
salivary testing kept coming up, not because we necessarily know exactly what to test for, but a ton of people are researching this. A ton of people are looking at, could we, including like Todd Schoenbaum was talking about this. And I mean, almost everybody from that, the first 4 or 5 people we interviewed is coming back to how can we predict, possibly who is going to be more susceptible to attack, if you will, of the implant through periimplantitis, and that's the holy grail. You know, there's been testing for periodontal disease risk, and now we're talking about the potential of could we assess periimplantitis risk through not just we're talking about bacterial testing, we're talking about, you know, testing to see how reactive your body is to things, essentially
mm,
how inflammatory of an environment do you have, how does your body react to bacteria. We talked about how this almost sounds a little bit of similar to how people reacted to COVID, you
mm,
know, with some people having these extreme reactions, long COVID, and
mm,
others having nothing. And so I think that is a big area, this gene specific therapy era that we live in, you know, Wes, where it's like it's targeted based upon the genetics of the patient.
mm,
And I think that's something that's a huge biological advance. And I agree with you. That's why I think Albertson stuff, it's interesting. But I think where we're headed more is there's so much data here that we can now get through all of this information. And AI
mm,
and big data is maybe going to be more important in essentially typing who you are, how you're going to react to implants, how you're going to react to a hip, you know, a hip replacement, whatever it might be.
mm,
What's your, could it be similar to what we do to test for other inflammatory diseases? So I thought that was fascinating, but I think, you know, as we actually went to, and I think this was the a time where it was very interesting talking to people that are in the implant design world, because I think, you know, we went to a couple of the corporate forums, we kind of heard what people are doing, and you know, there's a lot of attempts, I think, to sort of capture more market share using things like, again, more aggressive thread pitch, or ways to try to combine all of the potential surface technologies that you have into this huge catalog, you know, of implants. And then other companies are trying to focus on simplifying,
mm,
trying to have one or two connections instead of 4 or 5.
Mm.
You know, trying to have a connection that's compatible. That was one thing. It was interesting talking to Southern Implants Graham Blackbeard,
Mm.
talking about the idea. He made a very, I thought, interesting comment saying a small company shouldn't be engineering its own connection. That's irresponsible, he said, because who's to say if they'll be around in 20 or 30 or 40 years when patients need parts? So that's why a company like Southern has decided to use proven connections from other systems and simply focus on the manufacturing and, you know, making quality control the best it could possibly be. That was an interesting conversation coming from an engineer versus a doctor. You know, that was I thought eye opening. And the question that we asked him, kind of similar to maybe the question we've asked Brad the dental lab guy, is, well, how good are we now at manufacturing com- based upon where we were? And I remember when it occurred to me that the reason why Bronnemark's implants integrated wasn't because he figured out the perfect roughness. It was because the lathes at that time were not very precise, and it created like all this variation of roughness, which turned out to be right. Not purely luck, but there was some luck involved. So our manufacturing now, according to Graham,
Mm.
is it can maybe be perfect or as close to perfect as it's ever been.
I I would say in summary here before we get into the meat of the show is if you didn't come to the AO this year, and some of you came by and said hi to us, and we really appreciate that. That means a
Yep.
lot. That keeps us going. A couple people came by and had been listening to us since the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and some people just following, taking it to the next level. So I really appreciate those that came by. But if you didn't come to the AO this year, I think that one thing that's for sure is that when you come to the AO, you're going to hear right now some good, solid evidence when it comes to surgery.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to hear some good, solid evidence when it comes to prosthetics. And then you're also going to hear what's the future and what
Mm-hmm.
we need to be kind of just listening, putting your head to the ground and just kind of being ready for what's coming. So, we've talked about, some of these things in the past about what's coming. I feel like, and John, I think you would agree that there is something coming that we can test people readily in our office versus maybe sending them for vitamin D testing or C reactive protein through another doctor. I feel like that we're approaching a time where there's going to be some things that we can do in office that'll be affordable.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be in the next 2 to 3 years, but maybe in the next 5 to 10, that we're going to have some things that are really going to help us choose when it's right to place. In the
Yep.
meantime, what I would encourage you to do is I would encourage you to join the Academy meetings. And
Yep.
if you're not coming this year, you should come next year because next year's the 40th anniversary and it's in Seattle. We know that Seattle is always a great place that the Academy does host. John and I will be there. And, but you can expect more good stuff from the Academy as they move forward. They have many things going for them. Their attendance, one of the things that encouraged me is that the attendance was good in the meeting
Mm-hmm.
itself. And from what we hear from the director is that since they've opened it up to more of an international membership is up,
Mm-hmm.
and meeting attendance has since COVID has climbed up a little bit, and so that's good to hear. So their membership is strong, and I was encouraged even Saturday night at the VIP meeting that things are moving in the right direction, and there's a lot of good people that are interested in the success. It is the number one implant journal in the world, and it
Mm-hmm.
is one of the most respected organizations that really looks to the direction. So what's coming from the AO is a very special consensus statement. John, I think this was a big deal. And we talked to Homley Wing
Yep.
and also um, Paul Rosen.
Right.
And
Who
Paul
is
Rosen,
basically the co-chairs on
that's
this.
right, they were co-chairs on this. And what was said was that the academy, the president of the academy, Homley, met with key membership, Paul Rosen, who represented the American Academy of Periodontology, and they have been meeting with committees, a large group of people, and establishing consensus on what we should be doing to treat periimplantitis. So here's what you get from an academy. You're going to get an actual treatment recommendation on what you're going to see clinically and how we should be treating it from a periimplantitis right. And what we're going to do on the dental guys is we're going to get that information when it comes out here in the next month or two. We're going to tell you what's in it, what we're going to do in our practices, how we're going to move forward with it, if we're going to change or do anything with it. And then also, we're going to tell you, because what this not only did, John, what I liked about this is that they let industry inside. They
Mm-hmm.
let industry see. And what we heard is that there were key people there from corporations that said, we've been investing money in something. And because of what was said in the consensus meetings, those companies have actually stopped research in areas because of collaboration in those meetings. And they're looking at other things now, other tools and technologies to help with this problem. But another thing,
Yep.
too, is that they've identified in these meetings areas that we need more research in. So there's
Mm-hmm.
gray areas that they can't make consensus statements on, that they're just making educated guesses. So we're going to break that down for you guys in the coming months when the consensus comes out between the Academy of Osseointegration and the American Academy of Periodontology. It's a real important. I'm super excited about it because we've wanted this for a very long time, because there
Yep.
really is no direction on how we're supposed to be treating these things.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's like Wes said. I mean, what you're getting from this meeting is collaboration, both with the attendees at the meeting and the speakers, and also through industry. And more importantly, is the clout of a big group like this who can say, hey, we have educators, we have clinicians, we have everybody talking the same language. And I
Mm-hmm.
really think that that's huge, because on Monday morning, you just want to know, what do I do with this implant that's got bleeding on probing, and
That's
how does
right.
that work? And they're talking about the future, and I think, Wes, this was where, we try to do our homework when we go to these meetings. Every single one of these speakers, most of them we followed their work for years. Some of them are new to us, but we try to find out, what would be something they would like to talk about. Because as you guys know, watch the show. We take this, we have a lot of pride in this. That when people get on the show, we're not gonna ask them, their favorite ice cream flavor. We're gonna ask them about what are they passionate about, and we're hopefully going to be able to have somewhat of a conversation with them, because we're
Mm.
doing our homework as well. So we had Dr. Michael Norton on, and just before the meeting, I don't know, a few weeks back, I had come across a publication by Mike Picos in IJPRD, and it blew my mind, because Michael Picos was publishing a 3-year follow up on a bone adhesive, a bone adhesive. And I saw this, and I remember I started sending it out to people, including Wes, going, hey, and so then I realized I'd missed the earlier publications on this, and I hadn't seen them. And so I started going back, and Wes and I both looking at, okay, who's been doing this? Who's been involved with this? And of course, we know Mike Picos' name, but who do we find next? Well, two people that we ended up interviewing at the AO, David Cochran and Michael Norton. So Norton gets on the show, and this is pretty. You guys, we're not going to spoil the whole thing because it was great, but he had no idea that we were really going to talk about this. I don't think he really knew that we knew about this. And so he said, there is something that I think could be a game changer. And we said, hold on a moment. I think we know what you're talking about. So let's just talk about this, Wes, because I think we were both sort of in shock at hearing both Dr. Norton and Dr. Cochran just present what this is. And so the definition of this, it is, the technical word is MORBA, MORBA, big acronym for mineral, organic, resorbable bone adhesive, MORBA. And to give you a little idea of what this is, and this is just going to be the quick and dirty version of it. You can go read the studies, but it is developed from parts of mollusks, like ocean dwelling animals that have the ability to stick to things while underwater. And a couple of people got very interested in this because they thought, I wonder if it would be possible to stabilize an dental implant in the bone using this adhesive. And could that take an implant that was completely unstable, not just a spinner, but an implant that you could just rattle around in the osteotomy or the socket? And could you squirt something in there that would, within 10 minutes, it would set and it would be perfectly stable, and then you could watch that get replaced with bone, not be inflammatory? And I'm telling you, you can hear the whole interview, but it seems like it could be true, Wes. Like, there's some real good research. They've been doing animal studies. They've now had 3 years human trials. What in the world?
What in the world?
Is this an airbag moment for dentistry?
I'm telling you right now, this right here could be a game changer moment for implant dentistry. David Cochran has been he did the largest dog study that he's ever done for this and anything in his career. And David Cochran just won the Brandemark Award. Shout out to him. Another congratulations. We had him on to talk about this. And they did a dog study on this where they put implants in dogs and had 0 failures. And he said, I've never seen something this successful.
Yeah, 100% success.
And so there's a multi-center right now between him, Dr. Norton, and then
Picos.
and Michael Picos are doing research on this and the dental side of things. And so let me just break this down for you. Okay? Imagine taking a tooth out, regardless of the socket type. Okay, let's just say you needed to put an implant in. And you don't need to worry about stability, because in minutes, what you're going to do is you're going to drill some type of osteotomy, maybe not. Maybe just to get some sort of way to get some type of cylinder an implant of some shape, because they don't matter. And you put bone glue around this implant in a fashion, and you put it down into the socket, and you wait for just minutes, and you watch stability happen. Now, we're talking about logarithmic stability here. We're talking about a game changer moment. Imagine eliminating. Now, we're talking about this is what the test showed. If you all know the osseointegration curve, which starts up here, and it starts with 100% mechanical stability. And at 3 weeks, that mechanical stability is at its weakness. We know at 21 days, there's a dip in mechanical stability, and biology has to take over. So hopefully, biology starts taking over, and at 6 weeks, we have a stable implant, and we can do some things to it. Now, imagine there's no dip. From the moment you put bone glue in to the moment you test it at any point, day 2, 3, 4, whatever, there is no dip. Now, this has never happened. This is crazy. This is not crazy talk, John. For those that know what that means.
It's close to it, though.
It is close
because
to it.
This is where, you can't even get your mind around it, because the implications on this for immediate loading, immediate placement, the implications for changing implant designs, maybe not needing half or more, or 90% of the designs we currently have, which are many of them trying to achieve a certain primary stability. What if that didn't matter anymore? What if we could create it? And then the idea that this gets resorbed by our own bone rather than being some foreign body or a particle. And that, so Norton talks about how Picos, they didn't have 100% success in the human
No.
initially, but they had high success, but they had to change the formulation. And I thought it was very interesting. And you'll get to hear this whole interview talking with David Cochran about how this is no longer just a device potentially that you're dealing with the FDA. It's not like you can say, well, our implant's like everybody else's. This is maybe a medication, or it could be considered. So they're having to go through so much more scrutiny. Changing formulations is much harder. The research that's required is much more rigorous.
But
And but I mean, think of the implications.
Well, here, let me show you.
Forget about dentistry.
I'm going to put it on the screen. I'm going to put it on the screen because here is the implications, right? And if you listen, this is the time to pull off the road and go to the YouTube channel.
That's right.
And if you're listening on YouTube, right?
Yeah, listen to what Rev Bio thinks might be. I mean, our world of dental is a huge market, but it's really very minimal compared to orthopedics. Imagine you could go in with a broken arm. They take the two pieces, approximate them together. They can glue them together within 10 minutes. We have stability, and then we can maybe do some type of soft, brace or something. The market and the way it would change the way we do almost everything with bone. And here's Rev Bio saying, if this goes well, this could be, multi-billion dollar industry. And it would truly be a moment where we would say, like Michael Norton was the one who coined the term, the airbag moment. That's not us. And he said, this could be a moment where if this works, then like an airbag, every car manufacturer says, well, our car has to have that. And this could be something where everybody says, we got to have this. Tetranite is the brand name. So we want you to go and check out the publications. The one from Cochrane has a ton of animal studies. The one from Picos, and a little bit coming out now as well from Dr. Norton, has a more human trial side. The basic science is in there as well. You can read about it. And obviously, Wes, we always have said 1 year is interesting, but it doesn't change anything about my practice. 3 years, okay, interesting. What's going to be the threshold with this if it works? That's going to be the question, right? We need a lot more data.
We need a lot more data. Now, and I think, I can't wait for you guys to hear these interviews with David and Dr. Norton. And they were so great. And they were exciting. You could see it. And if you don't listen to it, watch it. Because both of them were just incredibly positive about this. There's the thing that's interesting, and maybe we don't share it here tonight, is how quickly is this coming? I think you're going to have to wait to listen to Dr. Cochran talk about how quickly this is coming. And if you want to check it out, a little more information about it, look up those publications and check out Rev Bio. We just showed the website, revbio.com. It's an interesting backstory. We can get into that later, but man, there's so much coming on the Dental Guys this year, and we're super pumped about this opportunity to really share something breaking. This wasn't something that was talked about on the podium, but this was something that was in journals. And this is why these two gentlemen and some of the other people that we spoke to are the people that we listen to, because they are the people trailblazing for us. They're breaking trail. They're going ahead, and they're going beyond the boundaries, which was the theme. And I think that's appropriate, John, is more than I thought about the theme, that they chose it appropriately, because we're just talking about the same things a lot, and it's really about time that we just go beyond the boundaries. We just stop. Yeah. We've settled some things. It's time to move on. And so,
it's time to bring in other specialties, like we saw with orthopedics. It's time to start thinking about, what's next, and have some consensus so we can sort of move on with our lives with some of these discussions that seem to have been going on forever. Now, Wes, you told me that one of the things, and you mentioned what's exciting about the Dental Guys this year, the fact that you can text us. That's pretty cool. We've debuted that this year. We've had great reaction from it. And Wes, you got a good one the other day.
Yeah.
So I want you to share that, and I want to spend a little bit of time maybe responding to this. A really good, interesting question.
Yeah. Hello, dental guys. I was wondering if you know of anyone who is scanning, milling, and centering in single visit appointments that is not using CEREC. I'm trying to decide between buying the Prime Scan, Prime Mill, and Speedfire oven versus the Dexus 3800W VHF E4 mill and the Ivoclar CS6 oven with either ExoCab or InLab software. I've used OmniCam for 8 years and PrimeScan for 5 months. I've associated briefly, and now I'm buying an office and from a retiring dentist and trying to decide really what to do and what to buy, and really wants to know where to go from here. And I really appreciate Andrew reaching out to the dental guys. Jon, should we be milling in 2024 in office, opening up a private practice, buying a private practice? Is it time for milling? Or what does the dental guys think about this in 2024?
Yeah. Well, I think 10 years ago, and we interviewed Sam Puri back in the day, who is one of the top guys at CEREC Doctors, right? So we've talked to some people who top of their game in what CEREC milling could do, for instance. But 10 years ago, I think I would have said, Andrew, you just buy yourself a mill. If you love it, but that's the only reason you buy it. You don't buy it because it's going to give you necessarily a better product than what you get from a commercial industrial mill, not commercial industrial mill. You're not necessarily doing it because it's less work. It's actually more work. And you don't do it because you're going to have the smoothest office workflow in the world. In fact, you're going to have a lot of things that you have to adapt. But if you love it, I think it can create really nice restorations. 10 years ago, but I would have said, and we did say, as we talked about this on the show, Wes, we said, but is that what I want to be doing in my office? Is the idea, first of all, of cost savings a reality? Let's hit that first, because I wish it wasn't this way. I wish people were asking what's best first. And I'm not saying Andrew's not. I'm saying a lot of people aren't asking what's best first these days. They're asking, can I ROI this thing? And I would make the statement that it's very, 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 very challenging to ROI it when you put into all of this your time. Now, there's ways to do ROI charts with, for instance, CEREC as the low-hanging fruit, right? Because we all know kind of what that's about. But when you start getting into higher level mills for zirconia, when you start talking about ExoCAD, when you start talking about integrating all the softwares together for machines that aren't in the same ecosystem, and then you start talking about the staff training required, are you going to be the guy doing the ExoCAD? Is there going to be someone trained? Is there going to be what if that person's sick? You start to rely on technology in a way that it becomes your good and your bad. But I think, again, 10 years ago, I would have said, okay, if you really love it, like I'm talking love it, and you don't mind if you're not as profitable, you just love it. Could you make a beautiful restoration? I think you can. But that's not where we are in 2024. Where we are in 2024 is printing. And we know, anybody that's been following in the printing world, that we now have printable materials that are classified as ceramics. Now, we could argue as to whether that really should be something we're using in our patients. I don't think we have enough data at all. But is there going to be a time now? I think Brad, we should have, when we talk to Brad next time, we should have him weigh in. But I think Brad would say the future is dentists will have printers in their offices that will be able to print various materials.
Yeah.
The labs will do a lot of the design, and they will mill and print certain things. But I think there's going to be a lot more place for design on the lab side, which dentists are not good at, no matter how good you think you are. And the printing happening in the office.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. Jon and I have explored this. We've been involved with it. Jon has even more involved with it in recent years, knowing some things that he knows behind the scenes and seeing more operating costs when it comes to those things. It's our opinion that definitely you can mill at a very high level. I think that either one of these options is excellent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it all depends on the support you're given. And I think if I was Andrew, I would take a hard look at one. First, I'm buying a retired dentist practice, and he's probably jetting. And I'm also probably going to flip a whole team inside of maybe a year. As much as you want to try to keep people on, they're going to want to leave. And training and hiring today is way different than it was 5-10 years ago. People, it takes time, it takes resources. And if you're willing to do that, like Jon said at the beginning of this, if you want to play that role, I say go.
Yeah,
but you've got to give the time, and it's going to be a suck, right? And it's going to pull you in a way that you're going to have to strain to get it in, get those restorations at the quality that a quality lab could give you in the United States. So what I would say is that if we were looking at this right now, and trust me, we're involved.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're involved. We're not going to talk about that tonight, how we're involved. But we're involved in looking at the future. And what Jon and I would say, and it's interesting because the dental guys took a break for about a year, you guys know, and you thought maybe, well, we weren't talking to one another. Oh, yeah. We weren't talking about some things. We were talking about other things. But what we both really have come to realize is that the future is printing. And we wouldn't have said that even 2 to 3 years ago. But printing technology and design services from high-end designers is where it's going. And I see a place for scanning in your office, Andrew, 100%. I also see a place for printing in the infancy today in your office for certain things. And I also see the need for systematizing this and making it something that is an ROI, because that's the hardest thing here. It really you start really looking at the nitty gritty of it. And what am I trying to achieve? What's your goal? Or what kind of dentist do you want to be? You know?
Yep.
Well,
and I think too, just realize that as we say that, we look at it as the same. There's so many things, and we are notorious for this, where we go, well, I could mill a crown for $20. Okay. And you might be right. You might be able to mill a crown for $10, $15, $20 in terms of your quote cost. But is that what you want to be doing at 8 p.m.? Is that what you love? What do you love? And I think that that's something that we want to challenge you to think about that. What do you love? Or is time the most valuable asset that you have? And that's something that I think we've learned over the years. So we're interested to hear from you, Andrew. Tell us what you decide to do. We'd love to see your setup if you get it. If not, let us know. For those who are listening, obviously we're taking questions. So if you got something for us, bring it. Make sure you connect with us on our social media channels. We're on all of them. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you want more of. It's been another great episode. For Wes, I'm Jon. We are the Dental Guys.